most common retirement questions that financial planners get. Well, here to talk with me about that is Dana Anspach from Sensible Money. Dana, welcome.
Hi, Bob. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. So we're going through the list of the 10 most common retirement questions that you receive. We're on to number 6, which goes like this. Should I roll my 401k over into an IRA?
Yes, that is a common and in today's environment, somewhat of a touchy question because Department of Labor rules came out really regulating what financial advisors. I don't want to say what we say, but how we go about discussing this topic. And so I like to discuss it in terms of pros and cons rather than in terms of any specific recommendations. Some of the things that we see as people get near what we call the decumulation stage, right? They need now to take regular retirement paychecks out of their 401k, are that the 401k plan will often require what are called pro rata withdrawals. I should say often, I've seen them always require pro rata, meaning if you have a portfolio of different funds, they're going to require that you sell proportionately out of all of those funds. Well, sometimes, as we see in these markets, some things are down or up more than others. And most of the time, when you're withdrawing, it makes a little more sense to be able to more selectively choose which asset classes you're going to sell to fund your withdrawals for the upcoming year. So that is something you're usually not able to do within a 401k plan. Another thing we've encountered is clients who want to do qualified charitable distributions beginning at age 70. You can only do those from IRA accounts. You can't do them from 401ks. Sometimes with smaller 401k plans, you can't have state taxes withheld. While you can withhold federal taxes, and you typically want to do so because most withdrawals from 401k plans are taxable, you also in many cases are going to want to withhold state taxes. And so some plans just don't have that option. Now, with your larger 401k providers, you usually do have that option, but we have definitely come across some that don't. One of the other restrictions we've encountered is the frequency at which you can take withdrawals. We think it makes sense in retirement to set up a monthly or sometimes even bi-monthly paycheck, just like it is while we're working. It makes it really easy. We're used to getting money direct deposited into our account, and we want that to be a seamless process as you enter retirement. Well, some 401k plans only allow quarterly withdrawals. We've seen some that will allow monthly, but not bi-monthly withdrawals. And so it can make that process a little bit restrictive. So those are all some what I'll call administrative things that people should think about as they're making this decision on, whether they should roll it over to an IRA. There's more. So 401ks will enter blackout periods if they move to a new 401k provider. So it's possible your funds could go through a time period where you can't access them, or they may change investment providers. And so now you have to go in and, update your investment selections. You can't buy individual securities like bonds or CDs that are maturing within a 401k plan. Now, that hasn't mattered a whole lot in the last decade, but now we are seeing higher yields. And so if you're implementing your income ladder, sometimes you may want to be doing that with individual CDs or treasury bills that mature within an IRA. And again, you can't do that within a 401k plan. Those are all things to consider. Of course, there's fees to consider. So, your 401k plan may have less costly options than if you were going elsewhere. And the other thing to consider is just having a real person that knows you to call and talk to.
Mm.
And I think this value is often missed when we have this discussion. One of the things that clients of ours, and I'm sure clients of most financial advisors really appreciate, is someone who knows them. When I pick up the phone, I know my client's voice.
Mm.
When they email me, I know who they are. And so when we encounter, health issues, or we've had clients that were in the hospital, they've often introduced us to their children or other family members. We know who they are. And I know what that experience is like when you call a 1-800 number and you're trying to get something done and you have to wait on hold, and you get someone on the phone who's 3 months out of school and they're reading off a script. And so I think that is something we don't talk about enough when we're talking about this particular phase of life and the decision on whether you should roll over or not.
Yeah. So two things in terms of leaving it behind that sometimes people mention. One is the fact that it's an ERISA plan, and there might be some bankruptcy protection there. And also, I think you've mentioned in the past there might be some investment options that are available that might not be available to a retail IRA, like stable value or GICs, for instance.
Yes. So the first, if you do have creditor issues or potentially facing bankruptcy, each state has its own set of creditor protection laws. There are some times where you can roll that to an IRA and the bulk of that balance, the creditor protection, will follow that transfer, but you have to check with your individual state to see what those laws are. But if you anticipate creditor issues, there could be reasons where you would say, yeah, I need to leave that in the 401k plan. And then the second point you brought up were certain investment options. So I'll give you an example. I have a client who has a 401k plan that has a stable value fund in it, and that was yielding significantly more than we could get in equivalent safe, low volatility investments outside the 401k plan. So we left a significant amount of their balance in that plan to take advantage of that particular investment option. And so you also mentioned GICs, guaranteed income contracts, for those people who don't know our acronyms, are certain unique options that sometimes you can find particularly within large 401k plans, because they've negotiated with their investment providers and made some of these unique options available. So those would be cases where, there could be a reason to leave the money in the plan, or at least a significant portion of it, to take advantage of those options.
Mm. So it sounds like this is a decision that should not be made lightly. It's not really it's a matter of sort of weighing all the pros and cons of leaving it behind or moving it.
It is, if you are working with an advisor, I think there and if you have a lot of accounts in different places, I think there's a tremendous amount of value in simplicity. And that means consolidating things. So that is something to think about every time you need to update an address change or a beneficiary change or your bank account change. Do you really want to have to go to 5 different places to do that? If you only have one single 401k plan and that's all your assets, well, it may be perfectly reasonable to leave it there, and that may not have some of the administrative burdens that I have mentioned. The other thing that comes up would simply be beneficiary options.
Mm.
And so sometimes, 401k plans will have outdated options for beneficiaries. The laws on what has to be paid out to beneficiaries have changed rapidly in the last few years. And so you also want to make sure, that you have your beneficiary designations up to date. And again, if you have 5 different places that you have to go do that, that can be a little cumbersome. The other thing that we didn't touch on was required minimum distributions. So 401k plans, you are required to take a distribution out of that, and you can't aggregate that with outside IRA accounts or with other 401k accounts. So again, that could be problematic if you have multiple accounts. This, of course, comes back to why we say there isn't one piece of advice that fits all. There's no one size fits all. I certainly have cases where somebody has one 401k plan and it makes sense for them to leave it.
Mm.
And many other cases where people had accounts all over the place and it really makes sense for them to consolidate them.
Yeah, so I think the answer is it depends, and it depends on a lot of different factors that you need to think carefully about.
It really does.
Yeah. So in our so Dana, covered a lot of ground. I think we covered all of it.
I don't know. There's
Or
probably
most of it.
something we missed, but definitely we covered a lot of different things that impact that decision.
All right. So in our next episode, where we talk more about these 10 common questions, we'll be looking at, can you convert IRA assets to a Roth IRA, and when? So I'll look forward to that one.
I look forward to it also.